Yes, you're welcome to Issues at Hand. My name is Nowamani and it is a good morning, 5th June 2023. The year is going fast ahead, and if you had resolutions at the beginning of the year, it's time to start checking and ticking some of them because the time is fast spent. But of course, we are here with Issues at Hand, where we discuss different issues affecting us as Ugandans as a whole, as well as some communities, socially, economically, and of course, communally. Now, we are going to get into our topic of today, which is of course, employment and labor as a whole. In studio with me is a guest, and her name is Miss Kagoya Robinah, CEO of Voices for Labor. She is going to be telling us more about herself, and then after we shall get into the topics. You're welcome, Miss Kagoya Robinah.
Thank you.
Could you tell us more about the position that you hold and what you guys do?
Okay. Once again, I'm Kagoya Robinah.
Yes.
And I'm the Executive Director of Voices for Labor. Voices for Labor is a civil society organization that promotes accessible justice to workers through legal aid and representation, research, advocacy, strategic litigation, among other methods. So basically, we are a labor support organization. We work with other partners, we work with trade unions to build their capacity to deliver better to the members they are representing.
Okay. As far as labor is concerned, and your vision for starting this good ministry, I should call it, what are some of the things you have achieved so far, and are you seeing where you're going as per the vision that you had at the start?
Yes. First of all, what inspired us to form Voices for Labor was the very uncomfortable situations and circumstances that happened during COVID-19. During COVID-19, we realized that many workers were laid off, and the due process was not followed. People's salaries were being cut off, people lost jobs, others were unfairly laid off without the proper procedures, and they couldn't access justice. Of course, yes, we have organizations that help the vulnerable workers that may not be accessing justice, but they're not enough. And during that time, also we saw that the voice of the workers was very down. In as much as we have trade unions, but still workers were not really being catered for. So we decided to form Voices for Labor so that we can see how we can reawaken the voice of workers in the country. So one of the things we have achieved, would say we can't really measure so much, but at least we have been able to extend justice to very many vulnerable workers. And here we are not looking at only workers in the formal setting, but we have also extended justice to workers in the informal economy, the ones that are self-employed, like the street vendors. We have represented street vendors in courts of law, but also we have advocated for the inclusion of informal economy workers in the legal process. This one we have not yet really achieved much, but we have a constitutional petition in court that challenges some legislations that explicitly discriminate informal workers. Yes.
Could you please shed a light on the informal workers? Who are they? What laws govern them, and how can they be implemented?
Okay, now informal workers is just a small component of the informal economy, I would say. Because you see, previously there was, we used to call it an informal sector, thinking it's just a small sector of people doing, but then we are having many sectors within an economy that don't have, which are in law and in practice not covered under formal arrangements. So we call it an informal economy. So in the informal economy, we have economic activities that are not formal. We have unregistered small businesses, but we also have self-employed workers, the on-account workers. But we also have wage labor in formal settings, but informalized. For example, you're having, when you look at the recent reports, the statistics on informal employment, which was just focusing on wage labor, like for example, workers who are in formal enterprises, fully registered, but they are casual workers. They don't have they don't have contracts. Then others are working in disguised kind of employment relationships where you can't even know who their employer is. So all those ones are falling under informal employment. And what characterizes informal employment is the biggest disadvantage is that they don't access many workplace benefits, just like other workers. Like you will not see a casual worker going on leave, you will not see a casual worker sometimes enjoying maternity benefits, you will not see a casual worker enjoying social protection because in most cases they are paid by cash and they are also easily laid off. So you will not see a casual worker sometimes also enjoying trade union rights because they lack that security of employment. Sometimes when they join trade unions and employers realize that they've joined trade unions, then they just lay them off. So they are very vulnerable. And then to the self-employed workers, the on-account workers, they also face their own peculiar issues, like for example, access to public space. You saw how street vendors in January, I think last year there were massive evictions of street vendors off the street.
Yes.
And yet actually these are over 10,000 workers that are surviving because of street vending. And so we are saying that yes, it could be informal work, but then it can actually, for you to transition from informal economy to formal, then you need first of all to recognize, to protect. So if that is the kind of work that the majority of your citizens are doing, then what can you do about it? First recognize, protect, then you can regulate. But you don't just come up with radical radical solutions. Please get off the street. Then when they get off the street, then what? So
talking about recognition, the informal sector in terms of labor is not recognized. They don't have laws that govern them, and that is what you're trying to fight for.
Yes. Now, the laws that try to regulate informal economy are actually very prohibitive. They are very discriminatory. So we can't say that the laws that protect. Of course, generally, I would say the Constitution, which is the supreme law or norm that we follow in the country, that is supposed to set a precedent for other laws and bylaws, is very progressive. For example, you'd see under Article 40, it gives the right of workers, every worker, to join or form a trade union of his or her own choice for purposes of collective bargaining. Now, trade unions are workers' organizations that are formed by workers to advance for their socio-economic interests. And the trade unions are there to build workers' power because, you can't compare workers with employers. Employers are always stronger. They have much more power, structural power. But workers, sometimes when they form these trade unions, they have a collective voice, they build power so that they can air out their issues, they can promote their socio-economic interests. But now, when you see such a progressive article in the Constitution, now it comes down to the laws that have been passed by Parliament. For example, the Labour Unions Act, actually, that operationalizes that one particular provision. The Labour Unions Act, when you look at it, it first of all defines a labour union to be an organization of employees. And there's a fundamental problem there because employees are defined as those who have a contract of service, that are employed, that have an employment relationship, meaning they have an employer. Now, when a definition like that exists in the law and it goes ahead even to talk about rights of employees and having accessing freedom of association, trade union rights, and you're still tagging it to only employees, then it means people like the workers like street vendors, the market vendors may not really enjoy that right because they don't have a defined employment relationship. They're employing themselves. But again, they also have peculiar issues in their line of work. It may not be with that because they don't have an employer, but they interface with public authorities. Yes. For example, in the markets, you see, like in the public markets, we see, let me take an example of KCCA. KCCA has markets where the market vendors are working from, so meaning they are providing a workspace and with certain conditions. Now, if you're having unemployment protection, unemployment law or labor unions, labor legislations, yes. That only focuses on a certain category of workers,
people.
Then you leave out these ones, and yet actually they are the majority. Then what are you trying to protect? For example, we've seen many precarious conditions in markets. when it comes, for example, to occupational safety and health of these workers. Yet actually they contribute, they pay a certain levy to the to KCCA.
Like the markets do pay something to
exactly,
KCCA.
but they don't get certain things
benefits,
benefits like occupational safety, and then also social protection. The government is supposed to put in place mechanisms where, like, okay, even if they are employing themselves, but how can they contribute something for the future when they retire, or in case they get economic shocks? And actually COVID taught us a lesson.
Of course,
yes.
it did.
So we have a progressive constitution, but then when it comes down to the laws that should operationalize, they are very discriminative.
So we are seeing loopholes in the law, starting from the law that was set up, and there is no one willing to address this particular problem, apart from voices of labor.
No.
Government is not government is not putting enough pressure on the constitution to be changed so that they can accommodate, is the word I was looking for, yes, so that they can accommodate the people working in informal sector.
So the constitution doesn't need to be changed because it's progressive.
Yes.
What needs to be changed are actually reforms within the legislations, these very laws that are passed by Parliament. For example, recently we have had an amendment that was passed recently, the Employment Amendment Act. Yes. When you look at that amendment, of course, they were also trying to just address a small component of informal work, and for them they were looking at wage labor. That's why they were saying, okay, now we are going to what? One of the objects of this bill is to curb down the growing rate of casualization of labor. But casualization of labor only targets workers who have an employment relationship. So we are, and also when you look at the way the remedies were proposed in that law, I don't think so much is going to change, because what they did is that they provided, of course they provided for a prohibitive clause that prohibits an employer from employing someone on a casual basis for more than 6 months. But you see, what happens is that sometimes we are not even informed by the realities, on the real realities that are happening in the country, or that are happening in the labor market. International Labour Organization made a research about temporary work, or the non-standard forms of work around the world. And in sub-Saharan Africa, Uganda was among the countries that were sampled. And among all those countries, Uganda had the highest forms of temporary work. And their temporary work, we mean work which is insecure, which is just on short term. So meaning that even people who work, if you're saying I can work for 6 months, yes, but after 6 months, for you to cure casualization, I should get a contract.
Yes.
But then that law does not actually regulate the period of the contract I should get, meaning you're trying to cure casualization by introducing fixed-term contracts, and yet fixed-term contracts are not regulated in the law. So what is going to happen is that you're going to give employers a window to give workers fixed-term contracts of 1 month, 2 months, even 2 weeks, because you think
there is no law governing the time period.
Yes, so it might even make workers to be in a much more worse position, because after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, someone says your contract has expired, and I don't need to give you a hearing, I don't need to give you a reason, I'll just say, because it's a justifiable reason for laying off, it's a justifiable reason for terminating an employment relationship, is the expiry of contract. So I'll give a worker 1 month, and I observe. If you steal, you steal something, and then I have to go through the rigorous process of investigating, giving you a fair hearing, I'll just say, okay, let me just be patient. Yeah, you go, your contract has expired. So it does not still bring a lot of security. So what needs to change are actually the labor legislations that enable workers to work in freedom and equity.
So who is supposed to change these legislations, and what is stopping them currently?
I would not talk so much about what is stopping them, but
maybe I thought, according to the report, maybe there was an issue that was stopping these laws from coming forward, and so I'm just asking.
Okay,
myself.
what I should even say is that the concept of informal economy is a very hard one.
It has been handled.
It has many interests. And yet, actually, even globally, we are seeing, when you look at the statistics from ILO, over 61% of workers around the globe,
worldwide,
are in the informal economy. So, the concept, first of all, the policymakers have not really conceptualized or understood, not understood, but they haven't appreciated the reason as to why informal economy workers need to be protected. When you look at, for example, the Ugandan, the National Development Plan or our policies, we are thinking, we are still so hinged on the European economic policies where we think industrialization, yes, industrialization is good, but we think when we focus so much on industrialization, then we are going to get jobs. But for many years, industrialization is not
helping.
Yes, it's not really coming down the unemployment levels. And even then, the few manufacturing sectors that are existing in Uganda are contributing still to the informal economy by casualizing employment.
Their workers.
Yes, by casualizing their workers. So, as the policymakers have to rethink the economic model of this country or the economic policy, all of us cannot go at the same pace.
True.
If you have failed to provide enough jobs for your people, and also the issue of also the job market has many dimensions, because also when you look at the UBOS statistics, I think of 2016, 2007 on the labor force survey, they revealed that actually most of our labor is unskilled, because most of the people, we are still having actually very, very low literacy. I mean,
qualifications.
Yes.
People are not qualified for what they do.
So about 60, according to those statistics, over 66% of the Ugandans had not even acquired formal education. Now, if they have not acquired formal education, and which formal education they defined in the survey to mean the ones who have actually reached secondary level, who have passed Uganda Advanced Certificate of Education. So if we are having a big percentage that has not reached there, then what kind of jobs? Yeah, even if you're talking about industrialization, what kind of jobs? Meaning most of them don't even have skills to get the jobs that are there. So at the end of the day, they will find themselves doing these odd jobs. But then how do you protect them? How do you enable them? How do you transition them that even in those small jobs of theirs, they can earn an income and they can progress
and even save for the future, for retirement?
Yes, yes. So the policymakers just need to rethink the economic model or the economic policies, because some of the things that happen are informed by some economic theories that have failed to work. Like now we are having the idea of smart city. When you look at the smart city campaign, it was really informed by World Bank, and I think during that time of the massive evictions of street vendors, like, okay, we need a smart city. Yes, having a smart city is okay, but you should have a smart city that is inclusive. Now, are you going to prioritize beatification over economic livelihoods?
Exactly.
So they have to balance. Because
thousands are earning off of informal sector, and we are seeing some of the parents actually getting school fees from these odd jobs that we're seeing. So if a plan would come up, or if you were to be one of the policymakers, what exactly would you do to bring change in this particular sector?
If I was a policymaker, or if I had a capacity, for example, to make the law like the parliamentarians, what I would advocate for is an enabling legal and policy framework for all workers, irrespective of their status. Not only formal workers, but also in the informal workers. Because as you look at the UBOS statistics, 87% of the labor force is in the informal economy.
Yes.
And then the small one that we are calling formal economy, even 92% of those workers who are in the formal economy are also under informal employment. So
how? Like what do you mean?
Now, the 92% in the formal economy, like for example, if you're working here for Family TV,
Yes.
Family TV is a registered enterprise.
Yes.
So in the formal setup, it's recognized as a formal enterprise employing workers. But then you might realize, I'm sorry to use the example,
It is well.
but you're going to realize that you might discover that 80% of the workers here don't even have written contracts of employment. They're employed on oral terms. So when they're employed on oral terms, it means they are not in law and in practice sufficiently covered under formal arrangements, and they
So
can't
in case something
access,
happens to the worker,
yes, they can't access workplace benefits, and they will not have job security. In most cases, they may not even access. Access social protection. Also, they may. It is easy to chase them because there's
and
nothing
they can't
that
report
binds.
anywhere and say they've chased me out of like maybe unfair judgment or stuff like that.
Yes, they could report, but it's hard to adduce evidence that you're an employee of somewhere, of a certain enterprise, when you don't have an appointment letter, you don't have an ID. We are having workplaces where the only thing a worker uses to access a workplace is a coupon that has a number and the company initials.
Logo and stuff.
Yes. So it doesn't have your face, it doesn't have your name, but you use that to access the workplace. So, but apart from only that, there's nothing that really identifies you as a worker. But also it hurts you in one way or the other that if you don't have a written contract of employment, sometimes even accessing credit, for example, if you wanted a salary loan, they will usually ask for an employment contract, which you don't have.
Okay.
Yes. So it is actually the gist of the report that was recently launched.
The Informal
launched by
Employment Report.
UBOS. Yes, the report on. It is the National Labour Force Survey report, but here they were focusing so much on what? On informal employment. And in that report, they acknowledge that actually 8 out of 10 Ugandans in these enterprises are working under oral arrangements. So that actually gives you a picture that 92% of those workers are under informal employment.
But of course, we can, lastly, before we go for a short break, we can look at this another way. For example, it is already hard to find where to work, to find placement in general, whether you are corporate or informal, to find where to work. So somebody has gotten a place to work and the agreement is oral and they're saying, okay, we're going to pay you this, but for us, we don't have contracts. Instead of sitting at home, a Ugandan will say, no, let me go and work, and I accept the terms and conditions that have been given to me. So we have a sector fighting for these people's rights, but these people don't even seem to care about their rights as long as they're employed.
Yes, I must agree with you. Of course, there's a lot of cheap labor on the labor market because of the high unemployment rates. But as a worker, yes, even because you have needs, you're driven by the needs. You're not driven by, how. So, but when you enter the labor market and you're working under oral arrangements, it doesn't mean it should continue like that. If you're an unemployed worker who knows your rights, you can still look for a better way to ask for written particulars. Because, for example, the Employment Act, I think under Section 59, puts an obligation on every employer to give written particulars to a worker within 2 weeks. So if the law enables you to certain rights, yes, you can access employment, but you can continue, you can continue asking the employer, please, can I at least have an ID? Can I at least have some written particulars to show me at what time should I report, what time should I leave, what are my hours of work? But that can only happen to workers actually who know their rights.
Exactly.
Of course, some employers might not be okay with giving contracts, but they might feel okay to give an employment ID. But at least even an employment ID gives corroborative evidence that you worked somewhere.
True.
So in absence of the agreement,
Contract.
At least you can
Show
present,
the ID.
Yes, present the ID, but there are workplaces which don't actually give even IDs.
All right, so let's go for a very short break. When we return, we are still discussing formal, informal employment and labor as at large. We will be back. It's issues at hand. You're still watching Issues at Hand on Family TV. Now, my name is Carol, and continuing with the discussion, of course, we were looking at Uganda government. According to the government, 7 out of 10 employed people or employed Ugandans work without contract or signed papers, now leaving them to labor law violations and employment insecurity, of course. And we have Miss Kagoya Robinah, CEO, Voices for Labor, discussing these issues, discussing your labor, discussing your work as a Ugandan, where you work, how are you supposed to, of course, take yourself, what are they supposed to do for you as your employers, and you as an employee, what are your rights? Now remember that Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe has all that you are desiring for when it comes to luxurious living. They have a gym, they have a swimming pool and a health club, of course, and a hotel where you can reside in case you have just landed in the country. But getting into the discussion, Ms. Kagoya, let's continue. Of course, what should these Ugandans do in case they find themselves in a situation where they weren't given contracts, they weren't given anything per se by their employers, and here is someone telling them, you don't have a job anymore, I've fired you. What next for that person? What should they do?
Of course, we have the law provides for a framework that is supposed to enable workers to access justice in case their rights are violated. And the first office that usually is visited when a worker has an issue at a workplace or has been terminated, or if he has been terminated, he or she has been terminated unfairly, is the labor office. So every district, according to the law, is supposed, according to the law, is supposed to have a district labor officer. Many districts right now have labor officers, though there are those few ones that don't have. But many of them have. In Kampala, every division has labor offices, actually labor courts. I think Kampala has a better capacity, yes, when it comes to resolving labor issues. But in as far as the law gives a worker right to report a complaint to the labor officer in case of a workplace violation or a labor rights violation, there's a challenge when it comes to casual contracts. Of course, the law also recognizes oral contracts, but the truth is, proving an oral contract is very
way
difficult.
harder.
Yes, it's way harder. In most cases, you see, if you have employed orally, it means even your money is given to you by cash. You cannot even go and print out a bank statement to show that, okay, this employer was employing me. So in most cases, employers sometimes deny that those were not our workers.
Exactly.
Yes, you have a genuine grievance here. Maybe you have been sexually harassed. They have not paid you wages for 8 months, almost a year, and then you can't even prove that you've not been paid. So, and now when an employer, for example, if you take an employer for unpayment of wages, maybe the only evidence will be bring another employee also to prove, and most employees will say, hey, what's my
don't
job?
put me
Yes,
in
they are going to,
problems.
yes. So in most cases, actually workers are not really accessing labor justice because of the precarity of the contracts, the nature of the precarity of the working terms and conditions at work. So yes, the law provides for an adjudication measure for you to access justice in case your rights are violated. But then, what happens to those 7 out of 10 who don't have oral contracts?
But I'm looking at a situation where these employers maybe do not want to get into the expenses, paying NSSF, you talked about it, and paying all these other rights in case they give someone a contract. Or they don't want to deal with a worker who is maybe stubborn at work and stuff like that for a long period of time because they are bound to follow what is in the contract. Do you think that's the issue?
Okay, one thing you should really know, employers, especially the profit-oriented employers, their aim is to maximize profits, accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. That is it. So they don't really care so much about the well-being of the workers in principle.
True.
So they are supposed to be pushed to do that, because when someone starts getting profits, all they care about is how can I continue increasing the profit margin, and that is always done at the expense of labor. So if and I think that was also the reason as to why the trade union movement was started, where workers now needed also power, so that their labor income share at the workplace, their labor income share can increase. So employers will always want to maximize profit. No employer is going to comfortably say, let me give a contract. But because there's a law, because maybe there's good labor administration mechanisms or labor inspection, so someone is like, they might come and inspect and they find that my workers don't have a contract, let me put for purposes of being compliant. But without the law, I think many employers will be exploiters, because when people accumulate, they want to continue accumulating and accumulating. So the law and the law is not supposed to merely provide for these rights, but it should put in place good enforcement mechanisms. Now, currently, we have a problem. The law provides for labor officers, yes, but you find that in that same law, those labor officers are having many roles, yet they don't have the capacity. They have the role of acting like a first court of instance, to receive complaints, to adjudicate, to mediate, and then to adjudicate. But also they have an investigative role where they're supposed to go for investigations at the workplace, they're supposed to inspect. So just imagine a small district somewhere there like Katakwi is having one labor officer. There's going to be a problem. When does that labor officer go to inspect
to all
the
those
workplaces in Katakwi? And then maybe as you're inspecting, there are these workers coming to office saying, I've been chased, I don't have this and this. So generally, their capacity, we have very few labor officers, but also their capacity. They're supposed, the labor administration department in Ministry of Gender and Labor needs to be strengthened. And again, one of the issues to enforcement of these rights has been, what would I say, the small funding that is given to the ministry. This ministry is like a junk of all trades. You're finding labor, you find labor, gender, children, women, the ones that are disabled, culture, all of them, all the social issues in the country are in one ministry. So when they're allocating money, I don't think they really put into, they just give it as a docket. But again, yet actually these are very serious issues in the country. Like in most countries, labor, the Ministry of Labor is actually independent, because
actually, even here, someone was suggesting a separate Ministry of Labor concerning only labor issues.
Yes.
Do you think it could address all the issues?
Yes, actually, it should be labor and social protection. Yeah. So it could actually at least try to improve labor administration, because they would say, okay, we have a full ministry, and then we can, when it comes to labor administration, labor inspection, enforcement, there is enough capacity, there is enough, not only capacity, but also the funding. But when you combine so many social issues in the society and you put them in one ministry, and then when you're appropriating money, you seeing it as just a ministry, but yet a ministry with very many peculiar issues that need to be handled. So now, like, I gave you a clause that talks about written particulars, where an employer is supposed to give written particulars within 2 weeks. Now, the purpose of inspection would be like, okay, do we have labor officers who go and carry out spontaneous visits on these employers to call, to just look at the number of the people they're employing, and then do they have contracts? Do they have, written particulars? We don't have. Because actually sometimes even labor officers sometimes they have fears. They don't have enough funding when it comes to inspection. Now imagine a labor officer is walking on foot to go to a workplace, a company, and then you go there and you say, I've come to inspect. They look at you. You're going to inspect capital, but you're not facilitated. And actually sometimes I've even found workplaces that are guarded by the army, and they get frightened.
So if you're
how do they even access?
If you're a law enforcer, you've come to somewhere where there's the army guarding, and so they say you even wonder where to start from.
Yes, they've had those experiences where actually they get overwhelmed and they just
give it up.
Yeah. So
who should be employed?
The weak labor inspection in the country has actually facilitated the poor working conditions at work.
So there's not enough manpower, but also the available officers to carry out. They
don't have enough capacity. They're supposed to be really, like, maybe it would even be proper when they're going to inspect. They go with security. They are well facilitated, but they are not. And it all still comes to funding.
All right, but as Ugandans, do you think, before we even tackle all these problems, do you think that we have a positive work culture and good ethics? As Uganda as a nation, do you think people have, because we could be fighting for the justice of the employers, but are the employers themselves of good quality, or are the employees right to first say, let's not first give our contract?
I do not know where we are standing when it comes to good work culture, because it has many components. But I will talk about, for example, productivity. It's part of productivity is one of those components of a good work.
Major component.
Yes. But I don't have the recent statistics or research, but there's been that general say that Ugandans are not productive. Like, there's been some cooperative analysis when it comes to Uganda and other countries within East Africa. I think there was also some cooperative analysis just between Kenya and Uganda, and they were saying that Kenyans are more, they have a more positive work culture, they are more productive compared to Ugandans. And also, some of the things maybe even inform why you find in hotels and some workplaces you're seeing Kenyan managers, you're seeing Kenyan supervisors. But whereas good work culture is very important, because there's the reason as to why workers survive in employment is because the company is doing well, and a company can only do well when there's productivity, when workers are really disciplined and they're doing what they're supposed to do, they have integrity, they are delivering diligently, they're professional, so the output is high. But we can't also talk about a positive work culture without decent work, because there are many things that push that bring out this negative work culture. For example, now just using the very example, if I'm employed on oral terms, I know there's nothing binding me with this company or this workplace. What is going to happen that I am not going to be so committed, because I know there's nothing that is binding me so much. Very true. Yeah. So that is also going to indirectly actually affect my attitude towards work. So and then when it comes also to the working terms and conditions of work, looking at this survey, the report on informal employment, it says that most of these people in informal employment are earning between 168,000. That is what the majority of them are earning. A month? Yes. Compared to the ones in the formal economy who are earning about 600,000. Now, if you're earning 168,000 per month, and you're going to the same market with the ones who are earning high, you have the same needs almost. You have children to educate, you have house rent to pay for, you have bills. Definitely still you're not going to have a positive work culture. You're going to continue, your mind is looking at how I can survive. So these are some of the workers you find that one leg is here, I'm trying to vend this, then I'm working here. So they're not really focused, because there is no job satisfaction. The needs drive them, so they can't really concentrate to say, okay, let me work in this. Let me give my all here. Yes, and that's why you also find that, for example, in public service, you find that very poor work culture, especially to the traditional civil servants who are earning less. You find someone, for example, a nurse in these health centers is earning maybe 400,000 or 300,000. We have had instances. There's a time I was working with actually the Nurses and Midwives Union as a delegate secretary, and we do a lot of visits in different districts. But sometimes you'd go to a health center and you find that the nurse in charge there, who is actually the only worker there in that small health center, has to first go and dig. Yeah? And then after digging, you come back like at 11, then you open. So
the people who are sick in the morning,
they have to wait for you because you know. So, and what drives that nurse to do that? Because actually the money is not enough, and yet they have needs. So you can't talk about a positive work culture without decent work.
True.
They have to collaborate. They have to really move hand in hand.
Okay, so government included the mindset change pillar under the parish development model, and it was of the view that, of course, if public awareness and sensitization was provided for positive mindset change, and the goal would be achieved for the positive work and work culture and good ethics to come into place. Do you think it would work if government went and mobilized people, talked to them about positive change? Would it really make any change?
Yes, it can work, but still in collaboration with other things. You know, it's like just saying that, teaching people to be patriotic. These are things which come naturally.
If there's,
you see, if there's a facilitating, there's an enabling environment for it to happen. Because now, yes, you're going to talk about a positive work attitude in the parish development model. But then when you don't, for example, address corruption, when an officer comes here and sensitizes me about parish development model and how my mindset should change, and then, okay, I'm reformed and I've understood, and then the money for the parish development model, the person who is supposed to dispense it to me, comes and says, you see, you're supposed to receive 3 million, but I'm giving you 1.
Or even
now,
500.
What is that going to do to what I've just received? So there are certain things that need to facilitate that. You don't just need, people actually know what to do. But there's a lot that needs to be changed. Yes.
Interesting. Okay, let's go to the country hoping to achieve upper middle income status by 2040. And emphasis, of course, is put on the work culture again, like I said, and ethics. Is it achievable by 2040 to find that Uganda will be an upper middle income status?
I don't know what are the measures of a middle income status, but for example, right now, for example, if you're going to talk about positive work culture without decent work, there is no way. Because you see, you forget that workers are consumers. Actually, workers are the engine of this economy, or of every economy. Because, for example, the government can only get taxes when there's an income.
Yes.
The domestic revenue for last year, the people who contributed the highest, that was pay as you earn, it was the workers. So now, if you're talking about a positive work culture as one of the facilitators of a middle income status, because people will be more productive, but they can't be productive without decent work. People can only save out of income, they can only consume out of income, and they can only pay taxes out of income. So yes, you're talking about industrialization, you're producing those goods, but who is going to buy them? Because you can't even, for you to even think about an export-led strategy, you have to first boost it. You have to first make sure your domestic demand is actually up there. And who are those people going to consume the goods domestically? These are the workers. Okay. And still they can only consume those goods that are being produced out of the income they are getting. But a country without a minimum wage for over 34 years now, and you're dreaming about
upper middle income status?
Yes, a middle income status, where you're talking about positive work culture. How? Without a minimum wage, without decent work, without people having really decent incomes, it might be really hard.
Okay, let's go back a little bit to trade unions. they have been put in place, some of them, to do certain things. My question is, have they achieved what they were put in place to do, or are they struggling? If they are struggling, why? What's the issue?
Okay, you see, achievements are continuous, especially for a movement. I wouldn't say, okay, now they have achieved what
they were put in place
for. But one thing I should note is that the trade union power in this country is really dead. And
not even low.
Yeah, it's dead. It needs to be revitalized. Maybe we would not even be having so much of these issues at the workplace if we had strong trade unions in the country.
Very true.
But their power has been really
trampled upon.
Yes, eroded. And because you can pick this from the statistics. The statistics show, the UBOS statistics show a trade union penetration rate of only 7% of the whole workforce. So that means there are very few workers even who have joined these movements. The biggest membership remains unorganized. It's not organized in the trade unions. So, and yet, when you're looking at the powers of trade unions, you have like power resources. You're looking at the associational power, which is their membership. For you to call yourself a strong trade union, then you must have a big membership, because when you have numbers, you speak with some power. Then the other thing would be the institutional capacity. The institutional power, do they really have it? In the institutional power, we are looking at, for example, the economic independence. Do they really have the means to serve their members? Do they have, on the institutional power, we're also looking at the enabling framework, the legal framework. Is it really facilitating them to organize? Because, for example, the unions in the private sector have found it so hard to organize workers. And partly it's also because of the enabling law, where the law, for example, says that when workers have joined a union, then the employer is bound to recognize those workers and then enter into arrangements with the union so that they can start negotiating. But what happens, for example, with that nature of work, 8 out of 10 on casual basis, when these unions go on the ground to organize workers, they'll find that most of the workers don't have contracts, they're casual, so they organize them. And then they tell the employer, these ones have joined. The next time they go, they will not be there. They would have chased them.
Of course.
Yeah. So organizing is also very hard, especially for the private sector unions. And also, what the other power which they lack is the coalitional power. I think trade unions have not also revisited or they have not done a proper analysis on where they're standing right now. Because for example, they don't have coalitional power. Coalitional power here, we are looking at how they relate with the general community, the general society. How do they have alliances? Do they have coalitions with civil society, with the communities? How have they strategically framed their issues to the wider community to understand the role of trade unions, their advantages? Most people don't know about them.
True.
Yeah. So how do they strategically influence the very people they're supposed to represent?
Okay, powerful discussion. But just before we go, I would like for you to comment on this continued child abuse in form of child labor that is going crazy. It's still on ground and the issue hasn't been solved. And you find people sending girls at a young age to do what government calls children performing dangerous tasks, maybe going to be housemaids, going to work at an early age. A child is waking up at 5 a.m. to go to the market and do very, 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 very dangerous things for the child. What do you have to say about continued child abuse in form of child labor? Now,
it's really a big challenge, and still it comes to enforcement. There have been so many laws that have been put there to facilitate to speak against child labor. But as you realize, every time UBOS brings a report, the rates child labor keeps going up and up. So, and one of the major things is also, I think, the culture or the attitude of the society, where I think previously children, to certain work to children by the communities was not considered as really harmful, and yet it becomes harmful when it is preventing the child from accessing education, is psychologically affecting the child, morally, and all those other spheres of a child's life. But it will still come to enforcement, and enforcement
of the law.
Yes, enforcement of the law, because the law is there that provides for that prohibits child labor, though it may not be so substantive. Like for example, when it comes to employment, child labor is being prohibited like more in employment relationships where there's an employer, but yet we have seen that child labor is happening more in informal settings, where actually they don't even have any kind of employment relationship. There was a report which actually showed that some of these children that are begging on the streets are actually being employed to beg.
Wow. I heard that. They have bosses back home who say you go and beg, you bring back.
Yes, they are being employed to beg. So, but you find them on the streets every day. So what is the government doing about it? It still comes to enforcement.
Okay.
And continuous maybe sensitization of the people to realize that actually children, because the moment we and it's actually bad for the country and also for the labor market. Because if you're going to be having a big number of people, our children joining child labor, it means our human capital as a country is not being developed. Generations are being killed. So what is going to happen to the future of the labor market? People are dropping out of school to join child labor.
True. All right, the discussion is really, really strong. Maybe we shall have Ms. Kagoya once again to discuss a lot more about labor. But from issues at hand this morning, this was our input. We hope you keep watching Family TV. We do have our social media platforms on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Family TV. Please do not forget to join the conversation. My name is Nowamani. Thank you so much.